as some of you might know, as a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. I don't know if that was anybody else's dream over here. Did anybody else want to be an astronaut? Oh, there you go. I would have never guessed. I would have never, ever guessed. But I wanted to be an astronaut. Part of the reason was that space just fascinated me. It was something that I found incredibly, incredibly interesting. And I think it's the fact that it was just vast. It's just so big. It's so unbelievable to see so many things beyond you that for me, it just amazed me. But as some of you might know that went to school with me, math and science were not my forte by any means. Okay? So I didn't, as you might have guessed, I didn't become an astronaut. I'm a real estate broker. That's not an astronaut. But I still love physics. I love science. I love all this stuff. And I still read about it till today. And if I'm not working or studying some Torah, I'm watching a documentary on astrophysics or reading up about astrophysics or something connected. And it's really, tonight, I want to talk about a few of the groundbreaking discoveries that have been made in the scientific community. And I want to talk about how they're connected to Torah. But before I go into the groundbreaking discoveries that have been made, I want to talk about the things that science has yet to discover. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to open up your minds and I want to open up your hearts to just realizing, and this is a notion that we all have, and it's a misconception that I feel like many people have, that if science hasn't proven something, or if we can't see it, it doesn't exist. Now, if you just compare, like there are tons of animals that can smell things we can't smell, and that can hear things we can't hear, and that can see distances that we can't see. And we don't necessarily say those things don't exist. We just say, oh, they have a better sense of sight, or better sense of smell, or better sense of hearing. So who are we to say that because our limited senses can't see something or can't perceive something, that thing doesn't exist? I think that that's the first thing to keep in mind. But the other thing to keep in mind also is that science has yet to discover so many things. Science has not proven so many things that exist in the world, so many things that exist in the universe, and you'll see from what I'm going to be talking about, not to say that groundbreaking discoveries haven't been made. They have been made. But so many things are yet to be discovered. And so I want to start with, number one, if you go back a few hundred years and think about the Earth, for example. 600 years ago, many people in the world thought the Earth was flat. If you asked different civilizations, what was the Earth? It was a flat disk, and if you went further away from the edges, you'd fall off. That was a belief for a very long time, until maybe 500 years ago, more or less, it was proven that no, the Earth seems to be round, so it's a ball. Now, if you look at commentaries on the Torah, this is something that for thousands of years has never been a discussion in Judaism. Nobody has ever had a doubt as to whether the Earth was round. If you look at commentaries, it talks about the Earth as Kadur Haaretz. Kadur in Hebrew means a ball. Not only that, people believe that the Earth was the center of the universe, and that also was never a topic of discussion in Judaism, because we know very well that the Earth revolves around the sun. So just to show how advanced Judaism was relative to the scientific community for a very, very long time. But that's a long time ago. If we want to talk about today, then today the groundbreaking discoveries that are being made, a lot of them are thanks to the Hubble Space Telescope. Now, if you ever heard of Edward Hubble, he was a man who invented the first long-range telescope that was able to see things far distances into the universe. And the NASA Space Telescope was named after him. It was named the NASA Hubble Space Telescope. And it allowed him to see things that are very, very far away, like other galaxies and other solar systems, things very far away from us. And one of the things he realized is that when he would look at an object in space, for example, a star, and then he would look at it the next year and then the year after that, not only from one year to the next was it further away, but from the year after that to the coming year, it was even further away. Meaning that not only were things moving away from him, but they were moving even farther away from him. Now, that was something that was very, very strange for people to see. And it started, sort of revolution in the scientific community, and people started looking at this, and people were wondering what exactly is happening. What universe do we live in? Is the universe something that just is, or is it something that expands? Is it something that's moving? And based on a lot of discoveries from Einstein, we all know very well, the underlying theory was that the universe had started at a very small point and had expanded outwards, and is still expanding till this day. Now, this is the underlying theory today of how the universe is created. If you ask people in the scientific community, most people will believe that the universe was created by the Big Bang. Now, the Big Bang is not an issue with Judaism, as some might think. If you look at a commentary on Bereshit, which is the beginning of creation, you'll see that the universe and the creation is referred to as a tiny little dot. And if you look at the Big Bang Theory, it's exactly talking about that. It's talking about a small little dot that expanded outwards and contained all the energy that was there and that would be inside the universe. So, one of the things I want to show today is how science and Torah are not necessarily in conflict with each other, but that they actually very often are side by side. And we can find an understanding. And one thing to keep in mind that's very important is that to interpret the Torah in its simplistic meaning if you took a text of the Bible and you looked at the English translation and you read it that way, it's very problematic, and it's actually, according to Judaism, it's considered heresy to read the entire Torah always like that just for its simple meaning. But many people do that and look at one line and, it says this, so it must mean this. The Torah is a sacred text, and it has all we see that's written in it as a translation is just the surface. But the amount of meaning that is behind that is never ending. There are so many different ways to interpret any verse, any word, any letter in the Torah. And for that reason, you can have a discovery in science that will seem to contradict what it says in the Torah. But in reality, if you look deeper, you'll realize that it doesn't contradict. So, if you're wondering what the Torah says about the creation of the world, number one, it says, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. It says, in the beginning, Hashem created the sky and the earth. Now, if you look at the Big Bang Theory, you're telling yourself, okay, well, that's false. From the very beginning, the first line of the Torah is wrong, because it says that the sky and the earth were created, and obviously we know it started from a small little point, expanded outwards, and that's wrong. But if you look deeper, like I was saying, and you look at the commentaries, you'll see that the word Bereshit doesn't actually mean the beginning. And if the Torah wanted to tell us this was the beginning, that it would have told us Barishona, which would actually mean at the beginning or in the beginning. But Bereshit is a very different word that doesn't exactly translate as in the beginning. Not only that, Rashi, which is a commentator from France from almost 1,000 years ago, explains to us that the story of creation is not given in chronological order. Now you would think that it would be in chronological order because we're told day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and so on. But he tells us, just know that what's presented to you here is not necessarily in order. And not only that, the things that you see that came before each other were not necessarily before a specific one. And Rashi explains to us that the first thing that was part of the creation, the first element of creation, was light. That's what he says. He says light was the first part of creation, and everything that came after followed the light. If you go back to the scientific theories, you'll see that they're talking about a tiny, small, little point called the singularity, which is an infinitely small point, that expanded outwards, containing all the energy that existed, that would exist inside the universe. If you look at the Torah, what it's talking about a small little point, starting off with light, which is energy, that was expanding outwards. Exactly the same story. So we're talking about things that are not contradicting each other here. Now, some of the things that seem a little bit more problematic, that people might have a little more difficulty with, is, okay, that's fine, but what about this whole element of time? Why does it say that for us in Judaism that the universe is 5,778 years old, but according to scientists, that the universe seems to be over 14 billion years old? Talking about a very, very big discrepancy over here. A few thousand years old and 14 billion years old. It's a big difference. And there's something amazing that's written in the commentary on the first portion of Bereshit, which talks about the creation. And it says that when the universe was created, during these 6 days of creation and the whole 7 days at the beginning of creation, that the light that was being used in this creation was not the light that existed after. Not only that, that during this time, day and night existed only because there was a force, there was God's will that was choosing for it to be day and choosing for it to be night. But it wasn't based on the fact that the earth was revolving around itself, and it wasn't based on the fact that the earth was revolving around the sun, because it wasn't at this point. So the whole concept of a day, which is 24 hours, at least according to this commentary, didn't exactly apply. Which explains a lot why the universe might seem a lot older than it does today. Keeping that in mind, and this whole thing about the Big Bang Theory and what's his name, that guy, Sheldon from that show, Big Bang Theory. I feel like he would be a lot better than me with this stuff, but he's very this guy knows everything. But it made me think of it when I was putting this all together. And what's very interesting is that to understand a system, any system, to truly understand it, you need to be able to step outside of it in order to look at it. And take the example of any piece of furniture. When you see it, you know that somebody designed it because there is intention there. There's specific angles and designs, and somebody was careful to make something look the way it does. Something like that. But when we look at the world, we don't see it this way. And I think the reason we don't see it this way is because we were born into this world and we never saw it from the outside. And this world is much more complex than things we know are man-made. But if you ask yourself, is the world a place of order or is it a place of disorder? It's a real question to ask yourself. And in order to answer that question, you need to ask yourself a bunch of questions. Is it in order or is it in disorder? Now, if you're talking about Middle East politics or if you're talking about US politics, I would say complete disorder. But if you want to talk about the actual universe itself, the world itself, ask yourself the questions. When you drop something, why does it always fall down and not up? Why does an apple tree always grow apples? Why does the earth always spin in the same way? Why? You could go on with questions like this of why things are the way they are. And there's obviously a predictability in this world, in this universe, that shows that there's intention here. If not, if we lived in a chaotic world, then things would just be all over the place. There wouldn't be rules applying to things. There wouldn't be, you would drop a ball, one time it would go up, one time it would go down. That would be disorder. Order is something that there's predictability behind it. So if you tell yourself, Jeremy, you're the first person to walk on Mars, okay? And let's just say, for the sake of this argument, that Mars has trees, okay? But people, no people. Jared's the first person there. And you're on Mars, you're walking, and you happen to see a table. A beautiful table like this one. What are the possibilities? What are you telling yourself in your head? Either someone brought it here, which is impossible, or you could go tell yourself, since there are trees on Mars, that some storm came, cut them up, chopped them up into little pieces, they went flying in the air, they came down, and just so happened to stick in the exact angles and places that they need to be, and they made a table. Now, you probably wouldn't say that because that sounds ridiculous. But, and if you agree with me that that's ridiculous, to understand why the world is the exact same thing, but we don't see it because we can't step outside of it, this world is far more complex than a table, and it's far more complex than even the organs that are in our body that are extremely complex. Everything that happens in this world, from the sun, from trees growing, from plants, anything you talk about is so complex, and there's clear intention behind it. There's clear predictability behind it. And you have to ask yourself, if there's predictability, if there's intention, if there's order to something, then, as it's said in Hebrew, im yesh seder, yesh mesader. If there is order to something, it must mean that someone is putting these things in order. The same way that table was designed by someone, this world that we agree is in order must be put in order by someone. One of the things that Einstein had a big difficulty with was a concept that was beginning to emerge at the time when he was a scientist, when he was practicing, when he was still alive. And there was a concept of something called a black hole. And to Einstein, this seemed like an idea that was too crazy to even believe. He said, I don't believe that something as chaotic as that can even exist in the universe. To me, it doesn't make sense. He believed that it wasn't much of a possibility, or he had at least difficulty with it. Today, we know that scientists believe at least 99% certainty that the universe contains not one, not two black holes, but many, many black holes. And if you want to understand what a black hole is and why Einstein had so much difficulty with this, simply put, if you take our sun, which is a star, when it's a certain size, a particular star, when it dies, it will end up collapsing on itself into an infinitely small point. And when it collapses into this infinitely small point, it begins to basically swallow things up in the universe. And when things are swallowed up by this monster, if you want to call it, inside the universe, that even the rules of physics, even the laws that apply to our universe go out the window. And to Einstein, this seemed like a crazy idea. And you can understand why it was such a crazy idea for him, because it was a place where it was believed that none of the laws of physics even applied in this place. And as we said, today, it's widely believed that they do exist. And what's amazing is that in the morning, we'd say, Yotzer HaMeorot. We talk about Hashem as creating the luminaries. And the wording that he uses is not that he created, but it says that he creates. Meaning that he continuously creates. Now, if we talk about a star, when it dies, as we said, there are stars that when they die, they collapse into chaos. Unlike other things that would just die and that just would end up sitting there. Like Mars, for example, which is a planet that just looks like a dead planet and it just sits there and revolves around the sun. This, on the other hand, ends up collapsing into total chaos and nothingness. And it shows you that unless there's a willingness to keep it alive, that this thing basically goes out of existence. It goes back into total chaos. This shows you the power of keeping something alive in this universe. Now when we say Yotzer HaMeorot, it's showing you that God is not only, He didn't only create this universe, He's continuously maintaining this universe in existence. And that when He decides to pull the plug on something, that it reverts back to total chaos. As it says at the beginning, it says Tohu Vavohu, which is widely translated as the world at the beginning was extremely chaotic. And we say that when certain things could happen in this world, it could cause this world to go back to Tohu Vavohu, to go back to total chaos. And the three things that hold up this world, as we're taught in Masechet Avot, which is in the Talmud, it says that acts of kindness, prayer, and Torah, the study of Torah, are the three pillars of this universe that keep this universe alive. And when you pull one of these, when one of these ceases to exist, that the world can go back into Tohu Vavohu, God forbid, that it would go back into chaos. So, one act of kindness, prayer, connecting to Hashem through Torah, these are the things that keep this world alive. That's the air that this universe breathes. And it's just something to keep in mind when you're going about your day-to-day and have the opportunity to give tzedakah, or have the opportunity to help out a person or help out an old person, or to just sit down and speak to Hashem, or to pray, or even if it's a difficulty, something that you're still working on, even belief, whatever it may be, that those are the things that keep this world alive. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions?